Okay, let's go ahead and see a demo of adaptive models also. The difference between predictive model and adaptive model, right? So the predictive model is created upfront, which requires a historical data. The adaptive model, I think this is actually real good capability of Pega as a differentiator for the Pega, which is adaptive model. The adaptive model does not require any kind of past historical data, right? So it's part of like always on AI, which keeps on learning from all the user interactions, right? So web click-throughs or like email responses or interaction history summaries, all that kind of stuff. So that's what actually like differentiates predictive models and adaptive models. So let's go ahead and create a new adaptive model. And so basically what we are going to do is we're going to create an adaptive model called card responses, and basically like use that in a decision strategy to show like how a predictive model can be actually like invoked from a strategy, and how it will be, how easily it is created, right? So to start with, I'm in the prediction studio. Let me go ahead and basically click on the next here. We have seen the predictive model, and now I'm going to click on the adaptive model. Let's go ahead and create the adaptive model here. All right. It's coming up. All right. So let's give it a name as a card response adaptive model. Okay, adaptive model, card response adaptive model. And business issue is again like it's category, right? So category in which we are actually going to create our models. So it's like it's a part of a taxonomy. So we're going to select like sales as a business issue. Under the sales category, we are going to create the adaptive model, right? So the first part of the creation of the adaptive model is we have to actually map what is my past positive and negative outcome, right? So for example, if I'm actually like offering a customer, right? So whenever we log into our bank, um, uh, or like any kind of like financial institution logins, that there will be like some kind of what you call advertisements which will come up, right? So like hey, this card, this is actually like offer. So basically like those offers are actually offered based on the prediction based on our profile, right? So that's what, right? So and once the offer is made to the customer, if the customer is actually clicking on that after, it's actually positive outcome. If he's ignoring, within like by default, like Pega sets like 30 minutes for the web click through kind of scenarios. But if it is offer is offered on any Pega website, Pega web application, and then the customer is not clicking within 30 minutes, and emails is actually like 24 hours, then that will be considered as a negative outcome. And those negative and positive outcomes keeps on actually like making the adaptive model learning, and that's how the adaptive model becomes like intelligent going forward, right? So basically like under the sales issue, we are creating a new adaptive model. We're going to say like, okay, my positive outcome is like if I'm offering a credit card, basically what we're going to do is like we're going to create an adaptive model and plug this adaptive model into a strategy. The strategy is going to give two different credit cards, offer the two different credit cards to the customers, and capture their responses, and basically like use based on their responses, if any future customer of the same profile is gonna offer is let's say like if he's going to get offered with those credit cards, what is his propensity to click on that link or not. That's what we're going to predict, right? So accepted, let's for example, if my offer is he's clicking on accepted, that means it's my positive outcome. Let's say like I'm if it is actually like gonna say like rejected, right? For example, rejected is my negative outcome, for example, and I'm going to select those two. So basically like my positive and negative outcomes I'm mapping, and just I'm going to go ahead and create it. right? So we started our wizard of adaptive model creation. So what we selected, if you remember, like no, we have selected our context as a customer, right? So the customer is actually like is as a predefined class or like no some data set in Pega, under which like no we have number of fields will be there, or like now in a context of relational database it's actually number of columns within a table. But basically what we are going to do is from that class we are going to map all the import all the properties are like no also known as like columns, basically like in our relation context. Basically we'll click on the add multiple fields, and on this page basically we're going to select all the predictors, like no all the available class properties as predictors for this adaptive model, right? So adaptive model keeps on actually looking at all this age, for example, branch code, whatever it is, right? So it keeps on actually like basing on that information on those class properties, it keeps on learning it, right? So I'm going to select those things and click submit. Okay, so yeah, it actually mapped 57 fields. It got like 57 fields from the customer data set, right? So customer class context. Here on this each of those things, you can actually map them a predictor type. Is it a numeric predictor type or symbolic predictor type? Symbolic again is like no two values only, right? So yes or no kind of stuff, right? um, uh, yes or no, or like no just like no if you can classify like a certain thing as like no okay, this is like no this is one group, or the other thing is like other group, that is kind of symbolic predictor. And if it is actually continuous values will be there, then it's actually numeric, right? So let's go ahead and accept everything as a default. So if you look at it, like no some of them are came as like, for example, churn came as a symbolic. That means it's like no he's going to churn or not going to churn. That's actually like no the Pega mapped them as a symbolic, right? For example, and you can actually like pass a parameters also to this model, and also like no integration, not integration, so interaction history summaries will be actually like no can be used for learning, right? So all the interaction histories, right? For example, like if there is any web click throughs or like no inbound calls or something like that, those things also will be plugged into this adaptive model to make the adaptive model intelligent going forward. That is actually here. And then outcomes, on the outcomes we actually already mapped accepted and rejected. On the settings tab we are going to specify what is my model update frequency. So 5000 response, right? So if there are like 5000 web clicks, after collecting 5000 web clicks, I'm asking that adaptive model to update itself with whatever the information it has at that time, right? So that's what the concept of like an update model after every so and so responses frequency. And going back to monitor here, let's say like if I'm actually like no let's say save it, right? So technically I created adaptive model, but I just wanted to see like no what kind of data my model actually collected, right? So if I click on the refresh state, it should not bring any data. The reason is that's actually one of the differentiation between a predictive model and an adaptive model. Adaptive model will be learned when it is executed somewhere. So that's why what we are going to say, like so it's we hit on the refresh, but it did not get any data. So let's go ahead and plug this in one of our strategy and execute that strategy, and come back here and see like what data it collected, right? So card response AM is actually my adaptive model. I'm going back to my, right now I'm in a prediction studio. I'm going back to my customer decision hub. And in the customer decision hub, there is a strategy, for example, and in the customer strategy called a prioritize credit cards. Basically, the strategies, again, you can actually go to the intelligence and click on the strategies. And here, like you can query up the strategies, and for example, prioritize credit cards is actually what we're gonna modify now. So this is a strategy pane. In the strategy pane, It's like our workflows, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually like just plug in like all the different types of components and then map them, and then whenever we execute it, it's going to actually follow that path. First of all, this strategy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check it out. Okay, so once I checked out this strategy, it's ready for any changes. Double click and bring it to the center. By the strategy, what it is doing is, this is actually right now it has three different types of components, right? One is a proposition data component. So what it is means, like, it's actually proposition is in Pega terms, if you, it's synonymous to offer, right? So proposition means an offer. So basically, like, what we are saying is, like, we are actually bringing all the data associated with a base card, a card named base card, and same thing with the young card also, right? So if you can actually like click on this and go to the properties and see the data for that one. So basically what it is saying, the proposition are also known as offer. Base card is actually come from it's coming from so and so business issue and so group. And proposition data, basically we are importing everything of a base card type. So the same way, we're gonna do the young card. So basically, the base cards and young cards are actually going into a set property. A set property is kind of like, you are setting the properties for later components which we're gonna plug in, right? So if you look at the set properties and click on the properties and see, basically there are by default there are some kind of standard Pega properties called py channel. So what it is saying is, the py channel is actually the call center, right? So the responses to the web clicks are actually coming back into the call center. That's what it means. And the direction is actually inbound, which is coming back into the Pega, right? So those things will be set here, are already set here. So now what we're going to do is, we already created the adaptive model. We are going to actually put the adaptive model into the strategy pane, right? So that will be under decision analytics, and that is of the adaptive model. I'm going to click the adaptive model, and so basically what I'm going to do is, if you look at the adaptive model here, the property says my source component is actually, there is nothing, right? So what we are going to do is, we are going to actually import this proposition data, offer data, and set some properties, right? And then map this to my adaptive model. Okay, now let's go ahead and see my adaptive models input. The adaptive model input says set channel properties. So basically, now whatever the data which is actually flowing here is already given as an input to this adaptive model, right? So let's go ahead and configure this adaptive model component. Here on the properties, what I'm going to say is, okay, this is my adaptive model, and what is my adaptive model? The adaptive model is the one which I just created, right? What is called let's see, card response adaptive model. This is what I have created, right? So that's it. You just pick the adaptive model, submit it, and then you just map it to the result. So this is a workflow, right? So again, we actually picking the, importing the data from using the proposition data component, and we are setting the properties basic properties, py channel and py direction, and then we are actually mapping that to the adaptive model which we have created in the prediction studio, right? Let's go ahead and save this one. Again, now just quickly, on the strategy pane, if you wanted to create additional components also, you can actually pick the sub strategies, or you can import the data using the import wizard. Basically, and all the business rules, you can actually plug in the decision table, decision trees. You can actually plug in the predictive models, adaptive models, and scorecard models also. You can do the data joins, data enrichments, using the enrichments and arbitration. Basically, you can filter the offers. Let's say my input is actually coming as multiple credit card offers. If I wanted to select the best offer, I can actually go ahead and use the arbitration option to basically prioritize my offers, right? So that's what is going to be presented to the customer on the Pega web page, right? So that intelligence is coming from my the strategy and also my adaptive model, which we have actually plugged in, right? The same way, like, selections, champion challenger will be used for comparing my predictive model with the base business rule. That is a little bit of advanced concept, but anyways, like, you have all these aggregations also, like the group buys and iterations and financial calculations you can do based on, like, input data. Okay, anyway, so now we have already created this strategy. We are going to save it. After saving it, let's go ahead and run it. Okay, this is a test panel, test pane. So basically, like, I'm going to save and run. So now my strategy is running, right? The strategy is running, which actually came back with some results, which says like page 1 of 2. There are 2 pages, like one page for the base card path, one page for the young card path, right? So the base card path, what it said is, like, it actually went through that one. And then if you look at, like, there's a propensity, there's something called propensity means, again, it is the willingness of the customer to accept the offer, right? So why it is 0.5 right now? Because to start with, the adaptive model we just created, it doesn't have any kind of intelligence, any kind of data. So 0.5 means it's a coin toss, right? It's yes or no. So that's why it starts with 0.5. The same way, like, no, on let's go back to the second page here. Second page here, and that is actually for different young card, basically, like, no, base card, or like, no, the young card, I think it is for let's see, this is base card. First one we saw was young card, I guess, and this also has a propensity of coin toss, which is a 0.5, right? So that's how we actually, like, we are gonna, that's how we have to plug the adaptive model and basically test it. So when more and more responses are coming in, this one will become like intelligent, and the propensity will keep on changing. So if we are actually offering that the car to the customer, and they are, like, the similar group profile customers are clicking on it again and again, the interaction history will be captured, and the propensity will keep on increasing based on our positive response, which we captured as accepted, right? If you remember, on the prediction studio, we actually said, like, positive as accepted and negative as rejected. So moment, if they are keep on clicking, the propensity will go up, and if they keep on ignoring, propensity will drop back. So that's how as the more and more responses come in, the model will actually, like, become very intelligent, right? So let's quickly go back to our prediction studio here again. If you remember our model, let's go to our model. Alright, so we call that as alright, let's see, type adaptive model, and we call that as I think let's pick up everything, let's see. Alright, credit sorry, card response AM model, right? So this one, previously, if you remember, when we have refresh data, there was no data collected. So when, let's go ahead and click on the refresh data. Alright, so now see, the data is collected, right? So it's actually again said, like, okay, base card has a performance area under curve as 50%, which also called a 0.5 propensity, because the data is not there. So if you keep on getting, like, more and more responses, this performance AUC will actually move, right? So then you can actually go ahead and see some additional predictor reports also, right? So here, like, what are the predictors basically which were used, and what was the outcome and stuff like that, right? So yeah, and under this base card proposition also, you can actually look at the model report. So yeah, so how the each of these predictors were used to come up with that 50%, like, 0.5. Right now the 0.5 is not very useful because there's not much data, but anyways, like, how it is actually used to come up with that particular 0.5 is what it is showing. You can actually look at the score distribution and trend also. There's not much data. More and more data you get, you can see, right? So, and how do you actually get the data? Basically, one is real time feedback from customers after the offer, or you can actually go ahead and when you are testing here, you can basically, instead of, right now we are actually say tested only one single case, right? You can actually go to the batch and set up a batch, and basically the batch input could be a dummied up data, or it could be from Monte Carlo data set which has millions of data, or if you have any database table or some kind of data set or data flow, you can actually plug those things and basically run it. So what happens is, let's say you have a 10,000 input records. Those 10,000 will be captured, and then you will see a real propensity or area under curve values will be changing, right? So that's all I wanted to show about the adaptive models. Thanks for your time.